Welcome all to Whispers in the Dark, where shadows breathe and forgotten voices stir. Step beyond the veil and lose yourself in a realm where reality fractures and nightmares whisper lullabies. Here we conjure true psychological thrillers, haunted tales, and horror stories that burrow deep beneath your skin and nestle in the quiet corners of your mind. Each story crackles like old film reels, unspooling secrets too heavy for daylight. Whether it's the slow unraveling of a fractured psyche or the cold caress of something unseen lurking just behind you, we promise narratives that will haunt you long after the final word is spoken. So get ready, dim the lights, slip on your headphones and listen closely for the whispers in the dark, and subscribe if you dare to return.
We checked into the hotel around 10 p.m., tired from the drive and just wanting to crash somewhere warm and quiet for the night. It was an old place out by the interstate, the kind of building that looked like it used to be important a long time ago when people still traveled for the sake of the journey and not just the destination. Heavy brickwork, tall arched windows, carpet so thick you couldn't hear your own footsteps, and a front-desk man who smiled too wide and didn't blink enough. He gave us a room on the 4th floor, said it was one of the quiet ones, and asked if we needed extra blankets, because the heat could be unreliable this time of year. My wife Alison laughed and said we'd be fine, and I wish she hadn't said that because it felt like a challenge, and the building took it personally. The elevator groaned as it carried us up, the lights flickering just slightly with a kind of heartbeat rhythm. We reached our floor, and the hallway was longer than it should have been, lined with faded wallpaper that might have once been red, but now looked like dried blood under candlelight. Our room was the last one at the end. 416, the number hung slightly crooked, like it had tried to fall off, but changed its mind. I unlocked the door and immediately noticed how cold it was inside. Not the kind of cold that comes from a broken heater, but the kind that feels wet and alive, like something breathing against your skin. The lights buzzed, but didn't flicker. The bed was made too tightly. The air smelled faintly of soap and something metallic. We set our bags down, tried the television, which didn't respond, and then the bathroom faucet, which coughed up brown water before clearing, and Alison said it was just an old building and we shouldn't overthink it. She lay down with her book while I scrolled my phone, until I realized the signal was dead. Not just weak, but gone completely. Like we were cut off from anything outside that floor. I went to the window and pulled the curtain aside. But all I saw was the reflection of the room, like the glass was a mirror. No view, no lights from the parking lot, no moon, no stars, just us staring back at ourselves. Slightly delayed by a second too long, I blinked and the reflection didn't, and I closed the curtain without saying anything. Then the knocking started, soft at first like someone tapping gently on the walls, then louder, moving around us, above us, below us, until it settled at the door, not knocking, but scratching like nails dragging, slow and deliberate against the wood. I looked through the peephole, but there was nothing, just the hallway stretching longer than before, with no end in sight, and the carpet looking darker, wetter, almost. Alison asked if I was messing with her, if I was trying to scare her, but I wasn't. I opened the door just a crack, and there was no one there. But the sound kept coming from the other side of the wall, this low whispering, like two people arguing behind wallpaper. I put my ear to it and heard my name spoken in a voice that sounded like Alison's, but she was behind me, sitting on the bed, staring at the same wall I was touching. She asked what I was doing, and I said nothing, and told her to turn the TV back on just to have some noise. But it stayed black and the remote didn't work, and that's when the bathroom light clicked on by itself. I walked over and found the sink full of water dark, and still, even though no one had turned it on, And when I reached to pull the plug, the water rippled, and something like a face surfaced just for a second, like someone looking up from the other side of the glass, mouth wide and eyes like polished bone, then gone like it had never been there. I didn't tell Alison, I just shut the door and told her the plumbing was messed up and maybe we should leave. She said I was being paranoid and laid back down. I tried to sleep, but the whispering came back louder now, from inside the room behind the headboard. Under the bed I got up and checked everything, found nothing, but the moment I lay down again, it started back up, like it was waiting for silence around 3 in the morning. The lights shut off completely, and the cold deepened. Alison finally admitted she felt something wrong that she had since we got off the elevator, that the room didn't feel empty. She said she dreamed of drowning in thick, dark water, and when she opened her eyes, the mirror across the room was fogged up with the words, "Help me," written backwards. I got up, grabbed our things and opened the door, but the hallway was gone. Not dark, just not there, like it had been erased, and all that remained was an open space that stretched on forever, filled with that same cold and whispering air. And I shut the door and locked it, and we sat together until sunrise, staring at the mirror, watching the words disappear and reappear like someone breathing them onto the glass from the other side around 7. The lights came back on, and the hallway returned like nothing had happened, and we didn't even speak. We just left bags in hand, not bothering to check out. I checked into the hotel just past midnight after a delayed flight and a 2-hour Uber ride through freezing rain, the kind that slicks the roads and makes everything outside feel like it's holding its breath. The clerk barely looked up when I walked in, handed me a keycard to room 508 and mumbled something about renovations on the upper floors. I didn't care. I was exhausted, hungry, and dreading the early meeting that waited for me in the morning. The elevator creaked its way up floor by floor, the lights inside dimming slightly with every ding until I stepped into the hallway and immediately noticed how quiet it was. Too quiet, like the air itself had been muffled and held between layers of old carpet and nicotine-stained wallpaper, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring to fill the void room. 508 was at the far end of the hall, and when I opened the door, the stale air hit me like it had been trapped for decades. The room was small, impersonal, the kind of space designed to be forgotten by the time your credit card bill arrives. Bed desk TV, a single armchair in the corner facing the window. I threw my suitcase onto the floor, didn't bother unpacking, and collapsed on the mattress, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling as the hum of the heater filled the room with a low, mechanical growl. I drifted in and out of shallow sleep until I woke suddenly for no reason, wide awake in total darkness, the kind that feels heavier than light should allow. I reached for my phone to check the time, 3:02 a.m., and something wasn't right. The hum from the heater had stopped completely, and the room was dead silent, like it had been emptied of all sound. I sat up slowly, my body alert in that instinctive way that knows when something is wrong, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. I listened, not moving, not blinking, and then I heard it faint, slow breathing from under the bed, not snoring, not the mechanical wheeze of pipes or vents, but slow, deliberate breathing, like someone lying perfectly still right beneath me. I froze every muscle in my body, tensed, heart pounding so hard, I felt it in my throat. I wanted to convince myself it was the heater clicking or the building settling, but I knew what breathing sounds like. I knew how it fills a room with a rhythm all its own, and this wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I had invited. It was coming from directly below me. I didn't move for what felt like an hour, just sat there, listening as the breathing continued, soft and steady, not labored, not panicked. calm, almost curious. I finally worked up the nerve to lean over the edge of the bed and peek under, and I swear to you what I saw should not exist. There were eyes not glowing, not wide, just open and watching, unmoving. Set in a face too pale, too long, with features that didn't line up, like someone had tried to imitate a human face from memory and gotten it all wrong. The thing didn't blink. It didn't flinch. It just breathed, staring straight into me, with an expression I can only describe as hunger. I scrambled back onto the bed, heart screaming, chest locked in ice, and tried to scream. But no sound came out. I grabbed my phone, shined the flashlight under the bed, and it was gone. Not nothing. Just empty, as if it had never been there, as if I'd hallucinated the whole thing, except I hadn't, because the carpet beneath the bed was wet, like something had been sweating or drooling, and the smell that came up with it was foul, sweet, like meat left in the sun. I ran to the door, yanked it open and bolted down the hallway, not stopping until I hit the front desk. But no one was there. The lobby was dark, lights off, furniture covered, like the place had been shut down for the season. I slammed my fists on the desk, screamed for help, but only my own echo answered me. I looked outside and saw nothing. No cars, no streetlights, no buildings, just a thick fog pressing up against the glass. Like the outside world had been erased, I went back to the elevator, punched the button over and over until the doors opened and the interior lights flickered on, but the floor numbers were gone. No display, just a blank panel. And when I stepped inside, the doors closed on their own, and I swear to you, the walls felt like they were breathing, like the elevator itself was alive, pulling me deeper into something that didn't want me to leave. I don't remember getting back to my room, but suddenly I was there, door closed, bed made everything just as I left it. Except the armchair had moved. It was now closer to the bed, facing me, as if someone had been sitting there waiting. I turned to run again, but the door wouldn't open the knob, ice cold like it had frozen in place. And then I heard the breathing again under the bed. Slow, steady, louder now, like it was growing stronger, feeding off my fear. And then it spoke just one word, drawn out and gurgled like it had never used a voice before mine. Not my name, but my voice repeated back to me in a wet, gargling whisper. And then silence. I don't know what happened. After that, I woke up in my car parked outside the hotel. We were somewhere in Utah, maybe 100 miles past the last town, when the sun dipped below the mountains and the sky turned the color of old bruises, and we decided we were too tired to keep driving. We'd been on the road 9 days, me, Cara, and Liza taking turns behind the wheel, singing to whatever stations we could find, laughing at our own dumb jokes. But that night we were quiet too. Quiet like the road had drained something from us and left only silence. So when we saw a flickering neon vacancy sign, we pulled in without speaking. The motel was one of those one-story concrete strips with a faded front office and a cigarette smell that clung to the air even before we opened the car doors. The man behind the counter didn't ask for ID, didn't smile, just slid a key across and said we'd be in room 6, the last one near the back. And if the phone rang, don't answer it because it wasn't for us. I thought he was joking, but his eyes were too glassy, too wide, like he hadn't blinked in hours. His lips moved a little after he stopped talking, like he was whispering to something behind his teeth. We grabbed the key and left the air outside. Felt thicker, like something was waiting. Our room was plain. 2 beds, a cracked mirror, and carpet that felt damp wherever you stepped. Liza dropped onto one bed, face down, still wearing her boots. Cara sat beside me on the other one, frowning at the ceiling like she could hear something. And when I asked what she heard, she said She didn't know just that it felt like someone had been in there before us and hadn't really left. I told her she was tired, that we all were. But I felt it too, that creeping sense that we weren't alone around 2 a.m. I woke to the phone ringing, one of those old rotary ones, beige and cracked, and it rang like it belonged in another time. Liza sat up, eyes wide. Cara looked at me, already knowing I'd answer. I picked up and felt the cold on the line, like the air on the other end came from miles underground, and then a voice whispered. Not in any language. I knew not a single voice either. More like many layered and broken and full of hunger, and then it stopped, like someone clamped a hand over its mouth, and I heard breathing slow and dry, like something waking up. I slammed the phone down, turned to the girls and saw them both staring at the window, wide open though. We'd locked it. The curtains blew inward. Though the air was dead still, I ran over and saw outside there was no car, no parking lot, no sign. Just black space, like the motel had been ripped out of the world. The stars above were smeared wrong, like spilled ink, like they were watching us from behind a film of water. Cara said we weren't supposed to answer it, and Liza kept repeating, "Gone, gone, gone," over and over. Then the lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, like they'd given up, and a low sound filled the room. Not a sound, really, more like a thought, something deep and heavy humming through the walls. We got on the bed together. I grabbed the Bible from the drawer, not because I believed, just because it was something. But the pages were blank, thin and dry, no words, and the mirror had fogged over from the inside, and something was writing in it. Our names then, a date that hadn't come yet, then the words. "Do you see it too?" I shut my eyes, whispered, "No, no, no." But when I opened them, Cara was gone. Just gone, like she'd never been there. And Liza was on the floor, curled up, shaking, whispering about the eyes under the bed. I reached for her and saw them eyes reflecting just barely like water. And then they blinked slowly, one at a time, and a hand came out, slow, deliberate, too long. Joints bending wrong, skin like wax. I yanked Liza up, and we ran into the hallway, which was longer now, bending downward like it had grown while we were in the room, and the doors were gone, just walls and that hum louder. Urgent, we ran, but the hallway didn't end, and then we saw her, Cara, standing at the far end, back, turned head tilted, like listening, and when we called her, she turned, eyes black, mouth moving, but no sound, and I knew whatever had whispered was wearing her now, using her face, looking for us. We backed away, and the floor cracked under us like glass. Something beneath waiting, and the walls pulsed with a light we couldn't see. With our eyes only feel it beat inside our skulls, in sync with something ancient and wrong. The ceiling above shimmered like oil, and for a moment we saw shadows moving behind it, crawling, pressing, watching, and the air smelled like copper and soil and rot and something else. Something familiar, like the scent of old photographs left in damp boxes. Something from before we were born. I don't remember how we escaped, just that. We woke up in the car behind the motel. Our bags still there, the key gone. And when we looked, the motel was gone too. Just desert and silence and static on every radio station. We didn't talk about it. Not more than nods and nightmares. And sometimes when my phone rings at night, even if it's off, even if it says unknown, I hear that, breathing again, patient and waiting. I checked into the hotel just past midnight. The clerk didn't look up. When I walked in, just slid the registration card across the desk with a hand that shook slightly and told me in a voice flat and distant that I'd be in room 209, second floor, end of the hall. I asked if there was food nearby, and he just muttered, "Nothing. Stays open that late." "Not around here, then." Looked past me. like someone was standing behind me, but when I turned, there was no one. The lobby was too quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, but wrong. Like the place was holding its breath. I took the elevator up, and the second the doors opened, I felt it. The temperature dropped, not in a way you could blame on air conditioning, but like the hallway itself was colder than it should have been. The lights above flickered once as I walked, and the carpet felt damp like it had just been cleaned, but smelled like mildew and copper. I unlocked 209 and stepped into a room that looked normal at first, just dated beige walls, generic art, 2 beds, and a dresser with a dusty TV, but the air felt still not stale exactly, but unmoving, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. I set my bag down, tried the TV. Nothing, just static. Every channel I flipped through buzzed and cracked, with that grainy white noise that seems louder than it should be. I gave up and decided to shower. The bathroom. Light buzzed faintly, and the mirror was already fogged like someone had just used it. When I wiped it off, I saw the shower curtain was drawn, and for a second I thought I saw a hand clutching it. Fingers too long and pale, but when I blinked it was gone. I yanked the curtain open, nothing there. The drain gurgled like it was clearing a clog, but I hadn't run any water yet. That should have been my first clue. I should have left then, but I convinced myself I was tired, traveling too much. Mind playing tricks. I didn't even shower, just brushed my teeth and lay down in the bed. Closest to the door, the sheets felt cold, slightly damp, like they hadn't fully dried, and the pillow smelled faintly of iron. I turned off the light and let the static from the TV play in the dark, too tired to care. The hum of it helped drown out the weird creaks and soft knocks I kept hearing from the hallway, but at some point the static stopped. Not like the TV turned off, but like the sound was taken away, just silence complete and suffocating. Then I heard something breathing, not loud, not close but steady, wet like air being pulled through broken lungs, and it was coming from under the other bed. I froze every inch of me, screamed to run to leave, but I couldn't move. I just stared at the darkness, trying not to breathe loud enough for it to hear me, and then I saw it, a hand, slowly reaching up, curling around the edge of the mattress skin like wax fingers, too thin, too sharp. I wanted to scream, but it would have heard me, and I knew if it heard me, it would move faster, and I didn't want to see how fast it could move. I slid off my bed as slow as I could and crawled toward the door, praying the old floor wouldn't creak, but every movement sounded like thunder in my ears. I reached for the handle, turned it, and it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the inside, but jammed, like the metal had warped. I turned to find something, anything to pry it open, and saw the other bed was now empty and the hand was gone. I didn't hear it move. I didn't see it crawl, but I knew it wasn't under the bed anymore. Then I saw the mirror in the bathroom fogging again slowly, like someone was standing there breathing on it, and I swear I saw my own reflection blink. Before I did, I grabbed the lamp and hurled it at the door, over and over until the wood cracked and the knob snapped, and I ran. I didn't take my bag, didn't look back, just sprinted down the hallway that now looked longer than before. Every door was closed, too closed, and the air buzzed with something I couldn't explain, like the building was alive and angry. The elevator was gone, just a shaft filled with dark. So I ran down the stairs, 2 steps at a time, and when I hit the lobby, the clerk was gone. Not just missing, but like he'd never existed. The desk empty, the computers off. I ran into the parking lot where my car sat, exactly where I left it, and when I looked back, the hotel lights went out one by one, each window, black until it was just a silhouette against the night, like it was exhaling relief that I'd left. I drove until morning, didn't stop, didn't eat, didn't speak, and when I checked my phone, there were no calls, no messages, just one photo in my gallery. A picture of me lying in that hotel bed, asleep with a shape standing at the foot of it. So tall its head bent against the ceiling, and its eyes twin smudges of ink staring down at me. I never took that photo. I don't know who or what did. And sometimes late at night when I try to sleep, I swear I hear that static again, low and broken, and I feel the air shift like something's found me again, like it's closer than I remember, and it's just waiting for me to close my eyes. We booked the hotel on a whim, the kind of place you find when you're tired of driving, and your GPS tells you there's nowhere else for miles. It was called the Asheville Inn, old and sun-bleached, half hidden by trees off a winding road in the mountains of West Virginia. We were 4 of us, me, Jake, Marcus, and Lily, best friends since college, doing one last road trip before life pulled us in different directions. The moment we pulled into the gravel lot, I felt it a wrongness in the way the building sat crooked against the tree line, like it had sunk just a little too deep into the earth. The front doors opened by themselves as we approached, slow and silent, and the air that came out was colder than it should have been. The woman at the front desk had a voice like a rusted hinge and never blinked once. While checking us in, she said, "We be in rooms 4 and 5 at the end of the hall." But when I asked if there were many other guests, she said, "None this weekend, just us." Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and the key she handed me felt strangely warm, like it had just come out of someone's pocket. Even though she'd pulled it from under the desk, the hall smelled like old wood and mold, and something else sharp and metallic like blood and bleach. And every door we passed had scratches around the knobs, like something inside had wanted out rooms. 4 and 5 were across from each other, narrow with peeling wallpaper and windows that looked out into thick trees that didn't seem to move even in the wind that night. We played cards, drank a little, laughed like we always did. And around midnight, Jake started complaining about a cold draft, even though all the windows were shut. I heard it too, a low hum in the walls like distant voices murmuring, and I tried to laugh it off, but Lily kept staring at the corner of the room, like she was seeing something. None of us could. She said she felt like someone was watching from the ceiling, like a presence pressed down into the room, heavy and hateful. We chalked it up to the wine and nerves and eventually went to bed. I couldn't sleep. The bed felt damp, the blankets too thin, and the shadows in the corners kept shifting like they had weight around 3 a.m. I heard whispering outside the door. Not loud, not clear, just soft like lips brushing the wood, saying things I couldn't understand, and I lay still listening, heart pounding until the knob turned once, then again, then stopped. I waited 10 minutes before moving, and when I finally opened the door, the hallway was dark, completely dark. The overhead lights off, though the rest of the inn still glowed with dim yellow bulbs. I stepped out, heart in my throat, and that's when I saw Jake at the end of the hallway, standing still facing the wall. His back to me, his hands at his sides. When I called his name, he didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, and as I got closer, I saw that his feet weren't touching the floor. His toes hovered inches above the carpet, and his head turned too far too slow, his neck bending in a way. No one's should his mouth opened, and what came out wasn't his voice but a sound like wind over broken glass, and I ran. I slammed the door and locked it, and found Lily sitting on the floor in the corner, shaking, saying over and over, "There are people in the walls, they're whispering, they're telling me secrets, they want me to listen." Marcus burst in, saying Jake was gone. Not just gone, but like he'd never been there. His bed, untouched, his bag missing. And that's when the lights flickered, and the hum in the walls turned into voices, louder, clearer, dozens of them moaning, crying, screaming, begging, and then laughing so loud it shook the walls. And the mirror in the bathroom cracked in a perfect circle, and something knocked from inside the shower. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, then again, harder, faster, like fists slamming. I grabbed Lily and we ran. The hallway was longer now, stretching where it shouldn't windows. Black like night had swallowed everything, and the wallpaper peeled in long, wet strips, exposing words carved beneath. Help me, they never left. It sees us, we found the lobby empty. The desk rotted, the front doors locked. No sign of the woman who checked us. In just a smell of rot and burnt hair. We broke a window and climbed out into the trees, running, until the inn disappeared behind us. Like it had never been there, just gone swallowed by the forest. We found a gas station an hour later, covered in scratches and dirt, and told the man inside what happened. He just looked at us, pale, and said, "You stayed at Ashvale. We burned that place down 15 years ago. It's not real. Not anymore. We left that town and never went back. But sometimes at night, when I close my eyes, I hear the whispers again. And once I saw Jake in a crowd across the street, standing, still staring, not blinking. And when I blinked, he was gone. But the next morning, I found a key in my coat pocket, warm, like it had just come from someone's hand, and etched on it was a number. I didn't want to see 4. We were 3 hours from the funeral when the rain started so hard it blurred the road into streaks of grey, and we decided to pull off for the night. The motel wasn't on any map, and the sign outside flickered with a tired red glow that simply read, "Lodge no name, no stars, no vacancy light." But the door was open, and the man at the desk didn't seem surprised to see us. He had this glassy stare and a mouth that moved a beat, too late for his words. He asked our names, and when I said mine, his lips twitched, like he recognized it, but said nothing. Just handed us a room key and said, "Stay warm." Storms only getting worse. The hallway smelled like dust and something faintly sour, and the lights overhead hummed with a sound just low enough to irritate your ears. Our room was at the very end, room 12, and the second we stepped inside, I felt it, the kind of cold that sinks not into your skin but straight through into your bones. A stale kind of cold that didn't feel natural, like it wasn't caused by the air but by something older. My wife Rachel tried the light, but it buzzed and died, leaving us in dim yellow light from the bedside lamp. The wallpaper peeled in places. The carpet stained and the mirror on the dresser was fogged. Despite the cold, Rachel tried to make the best of it, unpacked a bit, and said maybe we should just sleep through the storm and make the drive in the morning. And I agreed, but I couldn't shake the weight in my chest, like something heavy was sitting on me and watching. We were there for my cousin Adam, who died suddenly a week ago. Car crash, brutal closed casket kind of funeral. We hadn't been close lately, but we'd grown up together, and part of me still felt like I owed him something. A goodbye. Maybe I lay down in bed, eyes open, and that's when the phone rang. One of those old rotary phones, cracked and yellowed. I picked it up and heard only breathing, slow, raspy, dry, like wind through leaves. Then a voice, not quite a whisper, but not loud either, said, "Why didn't you come see me?" I froze because the voice wasn't a stranger's. It was Adam's. Not the Adam from our teenage years, but the Adam I heard in the background of voicemails the last few years. Strained, tired, full of things unsaid. I said his name, and the line went dead. Rachel asked who it was, and I lied. Said wrong number. Then the mirror across the room slowly began to fog, like someone was breathing against the glass. From the other side, words began to appear drawn into the mist. Just 3 words. "Where were you?" Rachel saw it too, and backed away, clutching the blanket around her as if that could help. And I stood up, heart pounding, trying to wipe the words away. But the moment my hand touched the mirror, the glass cracked, once sharply, then again, spider webbing across the surface, and something cold brushed my wrist. I turned, but nothing was there, just the reflection of the room, and behind us the shadow of a third figure, standing still, not moving, too tall, too thin, with arms hanging low. I spun around, but we were alone. Or so it seemed. Rachel whispered she wanted to leave, and I agreed, grabbed the keys and yanked open the door. But the hallway outside was gone, replaced by a corridor of bare wooden beams, stretching into darkness, with no windows, no end, and a sound like someone dragging nails along wood from just beyond the shadows. We shut the door, locked, it pushed the dresser in front of it, and sat in silence. The lights began to pulse dimmer, then darker, until only the mirror glowed faintly with an unnatural sheen, and I heard the voice again, this time behind me. Not through the phone, low and broken, like it was coming through water. You left me alone. The bed shifted, like someone had sat at the edge, and Rachel screamed, pointing to the closet door now wide open with a shape standing inside, unmoving. Head tilted, almost curious, the smell hit next like burnt hair, and old blood, thick enough to taste. I grabbed her hand and tried the window, painted shut. I smashed it with the lamp. But outside was not the parking lot, just rows of graves stretching endlessly in all directions, and every headstone had the same name, Adam Granger, over and over, etched deep and wrong. I turned to Rachel, but she was gone, just gone. Like she'd been erased from the room, and in her place the mirror now showed only me. But older pale eyes, black mouth sewn shut, and behind me, that figure still standing closer now, its hand reaching, lifting toward my shoulder, fingers like broken twigs. I ran for the door, threw the dresser aside, opened it to find the motel lobby empty again, clean as if no one had been there in years. Dust thick on the desk and chairs overturned like they'd been knocked in a struggle. I ran outside into the rain, and my car was there, door open, keys in the ignition engine running like we'd never left it. I got in, drove until the gas ran out, then walked until my feet bled. No one believed me. Not when I told them Rachel was gone. Not when I showed them the photo from my phone, the one I didn't take the one of us asleep in that motel room. We were 2 hours from home on a high school field trip to Ridgewood Amusement Park, a place that looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 90s, rusted rides, chipped paint and weird old speakers that crackled music that sounded warped and slowed down, but none of us cared. We were just happy to be away from school for a weekend, and the hotel they booked for us was one of those budget chains right off the highway, with a lobby that smelled like wet carpet and microwave dinners. I was rooming with my best friend Mason, and we were both hyped for the trip, laughing about the dumb stuff and planning to sneak out later that night to explore the park after dark. Like idiots. The room was basic, 2 twin beds, small TV, and a window that looked out onto the empty parking lot. But the second we stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was thick, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. Even though the maid cart was still outside, Mason dropped his bag and made a joke about the place being haunted, but I couldn't even fake a laugh. The wallpaper peeled in long strips above the headboard, and the mirror across from the beds was slightly tilted, like it had been yanked halfway off the wall. At some point, I went to the bathroom, and the light flickered on, slow, like a dying bulb, and I saw it, just for a second. In the mirror behind me, a shape standing near the shower. Not a person, exactly. Just something darker than the rest of the room. No features, no eyes, just there. I turned around fast, heart thudding. But it was gone, nothing there. And I told myself I imagined it, just shadows or nerves or a smudge on the mirror. But I didn't tell Mason instead. We grabbed snacks from the vending machine and watched TV until we fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to Mason whispering my name. But when I looked over, he was asleep facing the wall, breathing slow and deep, and the whispering continued soft just beside my ear, saying my name again and again, getting more urgent each time. And I sat up the room, completely dark. TV off, no light from the window, like someone had covered it from the outside. I reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black. And when I pressed the side button, nothing happened. Dead completely. Dead. I tried the lamp, but it didn't turn on either. Then I heard the door creak slowly open, but no footsteps followed, just silence, stretching long and heavy. I called out, thinking maybe one of the guys from another room was screwing with us, but no one answered. Then the whispering started again. Not just my name now, but something else, a word I couldn't understand. Like it came from a different throat, altogether dry and brittle, like crumpled paper, being torn, and I saw something in the mirror across the room. Not a reflection, but a window into another room, exactly like ours, except there were two shadows standing by the beds, both tall, both wrong. One bent sideways, like it had too many joints, the other still with a face that shifted every time I tried to focus on it. And then Mason sat up suddenly, gasping like he'd been underwater, eyes wide and staring past me, and he said, "Do you see them too?" And I didn't even ask what he meant, because I did. We grabbed our bags and tried the door, but it was locked. Not jammed, not stuck, just locked from the inside, and the key card didn't work anymore. The handle clicked uselessly, and then we heard laughter, soft and childlike, from under the beds, and the mirror fogged over, even though the room was ice cold, and words started appearing, letter by letter. "Help us, get out, run!" And then they were scratched away by something sharp from the inside, and a hand smeared across the glass. Long fingers, too many knuckles, nails, black and broken, dragging downward like it was trying to reach through. Mason started to cry. I've never seen him cry before. Not even when his dad left. He just curled up, whispering, "I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have come." And I turned to the window, pulled the curtain back, and it wasn't the parking lot outside anymore. It was the amusement park, but wrong, empty and decayed, like it had been abandoned for decades. Rusted rides collapsed. Booths, signs hanging by single nails, and the Ferris wheel turning slowly on its own, with something clinging to the side of one car. A figure that looked back at me, even from that distance, eyes glowing faintly red, and its mouth moving, whispering something I could almost hear inside my head. Then the beds began to shake, not violently, just enough to feel like something was crawling beneath them, slow and steady, like it didn't need to hurry, like it knew we had nowhere to go. The lights flickered once, then again, and when they came on for just a moment, the room was full of people, old people, young children, all grey, all dripping wet, like they'd drowned, their mouths open too, wide eyes gone, and they all stared at us with a hunger I've never felt before. And then the lights went out again, and when they came back, it was just me. Mason was gone, the bed empty. I pulled into the parking lot around 9 p.m., the sky already ink black with the kind of quiet that feels too complete, like the world's holding its breath. I'd been driving for 6 hours for some conference I wasn't even interested in, and I just wanted a hot shower and 6 hours of sleep before my morning pitch. The hotel was a low chain off the interstate, the kind you pick for convenience, not comfort faded letters, half lit on the neon sign, the word welcome, flickering so fast it looked like it was shivering. I was pulling my suitcase from the trunk when I saw it. A face staring down at me from a second-floor window. Completely still, pale eyes, wide like it hadn't blinked in years. The curtains moved slightly, like it had stepped back, and I felt it immediately. that wrongness, that buzzing pressure in the back of your head you can't explain. And I told myself it was just another guest, just tired, just overworked. But when I got to the front desk and the clerk handed me my key card, his hand trembled, and I mean trembled like he was holding something frozen. He wouldn't meet my eyes, and when I asked which room it was, he barely whispered, 217, second floor corner. The same damn room I saw the thing in. I wanted to ask to switch rooms, but the words caught in my throat, like something was already lodged there, like it didn't want me to say anything. The hallway was too long, smelled like bleach and wet carpet, and the wallpaper peeled like skin, revealing older layers underneath floral patterns from a decade long buried. The elevator creaked and groaned and stopped a few inches short of the second floor, so I had to step up into the hall, and when I did, the silence hit me hard. Not quiet, but completely still. No TVs, no footsteps, no muffled voices, just me breathing, and even that felt loud. The air was heavier on that floor, humid like a basement, and as I walked toward my room, I passed door after door, all shut, all numbered, wrong like they'd been switched or repainted over the years. And when I finally reached 217, I just stood there, key card in hand, heart pounding. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see if something was waiting behind the door, and I remember glancing at the peephole, and for a split second I saw an eye looking back. Not mine, not a reflection, something else wide and lidless, and I blinked and it was gone. I opened the door and the room was exactly what you'd expect. Beige walls, dim lamp, 2 beds, a tiny desk, but it felt wrong. Every object was too still, too placed like a stage set, waiting for the actor to arrive, and the window was open, just slightly, the curtains swaying, even though the air conditioner wasn't running, and the parking lot below was empty. Not a single car, not even mine. I shut the window, locked. It shoved a chair under the handle, out of habit or fear, or both. Then I tried to call the front desk, but the line was dead. Just a low hiss, like something breathing directly into the receiver. I turned on the TV. Nothing static, I unplugged it. Still the same sound, like someone whispering behind glass. I tried to shake it off. Showered. Got in bed and stared at the ceiling until sleep dragged me under. But it didn't last long. I woke to the sound of someone dragging something heavy across the carpet outside my door. Slow, steady, like something wet being pulled, and then a knock, a single knock. Soft, like it didn't want to wake the others. And when I looked at the door, the peephole was black. Not just dark, but black, like someone had covered it with their eye again. I didn't move, I just lay there sweating frozen, and the knock came again. Then the sound of the keycard reader beeping and the door handle twitching like someone was trying it, over and over, slow, then fast, then slow again. But the chair held it. Finally stopped after what felt like hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't move until sunlight finally bled through the curtains, and I opened the door and found nothing. No marks on the carpet, no footprints. Just a single long scratch across the inside of the door, deep and deliberate. And when I went downstairs, my car was exactly where I left it. But something was wrong with it. The rearview mirror was twisted, facing the back seat, and the passenger door was unlocked. Though I never opened it, I checked out as fast as I could. The clerk wasn't there. Just a sign saying, "Back in 5." And I left the key on the counter and drove off, heart pounding, trying not to look in the rearview mirror. And that should have been it. I should have been fine. But every time I close my eyes, I see the room, again, the window open, the eye watching. And the worst part, the absolute worst part is, when I checked my phone later to get directions, there was a new photo in my gallery, taken at 3 a.m. It's me asleep in the bed, and behind me, standing just outside the bathroom door, something tall, Something pale, something smiling too wide, its eyes reflecting, like they'd never stop watching. And now sometimes at night I wake up, not in my bed, but on hotel sheets in a room I don't remember booking. We were about 8 hours into the drive. Me and my brother Alan headed to visit our cousins out near the border, when the rain started so hard it felt like the sky was cracking open and the road ahead disappeared into a blur of black and headlights. We hadn't seen another car in nearly an hour, and the interstate signs were long gone, swallowed by trees and wet air. And that's when we spotted it. A crooked old sign, just barely lit, that read, "The Marrow Inn," with two of the letters flickering and the O swinging, like it had come loose. We pulled in mostly because we were tired, but partly because the car had started to make a grinding noise that didn't sound mechanical, more like breathing strained and wet. The building was tucked into the woods, tall and skeletal like a church that forgot what it prayed to, and the moment we stepped out of the car, the silence hit us heavy, thick like syrup, as if sound itself had been strangled. The lobby was cold and old, the kind of old that seeps into your teeth like dust and mildew. The woman at the front desk looked like she'd been sitting there for decades, her skin grey, her eyes too still. And when she spoke, it sounded like a record skipping over itself. She said 1 room, 2 beds, 2nd floor, no breakfast, no check-out time. And she slid the key across a counter stained with something that looked like dried ink or blood. We took the key without a word. Too tired to argue, too unsettled to ask questions. The hallway smelled like mold and something sweeter, almost metallic. And the lights above buzzed dimly like they were holding back a scream. Our room was at the far end, and when we stepped inside, the air changed. It was colder wrong, the way a place feels just after someone's died. 2 beds, stiff sheets, walls stained with old water damage that looked disturbingly like faces screaming with their mouths wide open, and when I sat on the mattress it hissed softly like air being let out or something. Exhaling, Alan was already in the bathroom brushing his teeth when the lights flickered, and I swear I heard whispering from the air vent, a soft, repetitive sound, like someone reciting names over and over the television. Turned on by itself, static at full volume, and then cut to black, showing nothing but our reflection sitting on the bed, though I wasn't moving, and Alan wasn't there, just me and a second version of me smiling with no teeth. I turned it off hard and called out to Alan, who didn't answer. I walked to the bathroom door and knocked. Nothing. Then opened it, and the lights were off. The mirror fogged, like someone had just stepped out of a long, hot shower. But there was no water running, and Alan was gone. I stepped back into the room, and he was sitting on the bed, now staring at the TV, even though it was off, and when I touched his shoulder, he was cold, so cold, like he'd been outside in snow, and he turned slowly, eyes unfocused, and said the words, "It's not done yet," and lay down without another word. I didn't sleep. Not really, just lay there, heart hammering, ears straining to hear anything beyond the creaking and the soft scrape of something moving inside the walls around 2 a.m. The closet door creaked open on its own, and a shape stood there, small, thin, with arms too long and fingers that reached the floor. It didn't move, just stood watching. I couldn't see its face, only the glint of something wet where eyes should be, and then it took a step forward and vanished like smoke being sucked into a vent. The whispering started again, but louder now, insistent, urgent, my name this time, again and again and again. And Alan started speaking in his sleep, saying things that didn't make sense. Voices overlapping from his throat, like a crowd shouting from inside his chest. I shook him hard, tried to wake him, but his eyes opened, and they were all white. No iris, no pupil. And he said, "They remember you," and then screamed so loud the lamp shattered and the door slammed shut. I tried to run, but the floor stretched away from me, like the hallway was twisting, pulling backward, and all the lights blew out at once, plunging me into black. I could hear them all around walking, whispering, sobbing, some laughing, broken laughs that made my skin crawl like centipedes crawling up my spine. The bed slid across the room, hitting the wall hard, and Alan was gone again, only his shoes left smoking slightly, and a voice said, "He stayed and you will too." I don't know how I got out. I remember the fire alarm going off, and then I was outside in the rain-soaked, gasping. Looking back, and the hotel was just gone, nothing but trees, where it had been no road, no driveway, no building. I screamed until I couldn't anymore, drove until sunrise, and never looked back. I tried to report it, but there was nothing, no records, no trace of the Marrow Inn, and Alan was never found. Every now and then when I drive alone, I'll see that same crooked sign in the distance, flickering like a warning, and sometimes I hear Alan in the back seat humming softly even when the car is empty, and the rear-view mirror shows nothing at all. We had been backpacking across Europe for 2 weeks when we booked the hotel in the small village outside Prague. It was cheap and had good reviews, though now I wonder who really wrote them. There were 4 of us. Me, Dan Harper and Jules, all burned out from hostels and endless trains. We just wanted a clean room and real beds for the night. Something quiet and off the beaten path. The place was called Pension. Hradek, a crumbling old manor, with ivy growing over its windows, and a bell above the door that rang too softly when we entered, like it didn't want anyone to know we had come. The man behind the desk was pale, thin, his hands mottled like he had spent his life underground. He spoke barely above a whisper, and avoided our eyes as he handed us the single, heavy key room. 9, he said, and nothing else. His mouth barely moved when he spoke, his skin dry and grey like paper left in the sun too long. The hallways were narrow and cold, with wallpaper that peeled in long curling strips, revealing walls that looked more like stone than plaster. We laughed about it, said it had character, but I noticed the smell, then something earthy and sharp like dead leaves and old blood. Room 9 was at the end of the hall, a brass number on the door, so tarnished you could barely read it inside. It was colder still and too dark. The one window faced a wall of trees thick and pressing against the glass. Like they wanted in, the beds were covered in faded quilts, and the floor creaked even when no one was moving. We settled in anyway, too tired to be picky. Dan went to shower, while Harper and Jules passed out on their beds. I stayed up reading, scrolling through my phone until the signal dropped completely, and I heard something scratching from behind the headboard. Not mice, not claws, it sounded like fingers dragging slowly across wood. I tapped the wall. Nothing. I told myself it was an old building, and lay back, but the scratching came again, and now it was on the ceiling, soft and deliberate, like someone crawling above us. I whispered to Dan, but he didn't answer. I checked the bathroom. The door was open, the light flickering, and the shower still dripping, but he was gone. Towel still hanging there. Clothes folded on the floor. I called for him. Checked the hallway empty except for the soft sound of footsteps that weren't mine coming from the far end. I turned back to the room, heart pounding. And when I got there, the beds were empty. Harper and Jules gone too. I stood in the center of the room trying to understand, when I noticed the mirror was fogged over, though the air was cold and dry, and written across the glass were words in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood it. Said it remembers you. I ran out into the hallway, but it wasn't the same, longer, darker. The wallpaper alive now, pulsing slowly like breath, and there were doors where there hadn't been before, each one slightly open shadows moving inside. I called out for them, but the only answer was the creak of floorboards behind me. I didn't turn around, I just ran. I didn't stop until I slammed into the front desk. But the man was gone and the lobby looked different, like no one had used it in years. Dust inches thick spider webs like ropes, and the bell was rusted silent. I backed away and saw them all standing at the top of the staircase, Dan, Harper, Jules. But their faces were wrong mouths, two wide eyes, black and dripping, something thick. They raised their hands in unison and pointed behind me. I turned and saw the creature for the first time tall. Too tall, with arms that reached the floor, its skin like melted wax covered in faces shifting slowly, some screaming, some smiling. It didn't move, but I felt it pull at me like gravity, like drowning. I ran again through doorways that led nowhere, down halls that twisted back into themselves, until I opened one door and I was in room 9 again. But now the walls were covered in deep gouges, like something had been trying to claw its way out. The beds were gone, the window was bricked over, and the ceiling dripped something black onto the floor in slow, rhythmic drops. Behind me the door shut on its own, and I knew then I would not leave. Not really, not all of me. I remember collapsing on the floor, whispering their names until I passed out or died or something worse. When I woke, I was on the train alone, ticket in my pocket for a place I didn't recognize. My phone was back on, but all the photos were gone, except one. It was room 9, and in the corner something watching from the shadows, not quite visible, but real. I tried to contact them, but their numbers no longer existed, their social media accounts deleted, like they'd never been born. I told people I lost them somewhere in the woods, but that was a lie. I lost them to the hotel and whatever lived there, and sometimes late at night, when the light in my apartment flickers and the air turns too still, I hear the scratching again, and I know it found me. And it's waiting for me to remember what it showed me that night in the mirror, waiting for me to come back and take my place.
If you enjoyed the journey and survived it, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who sleeps too easily, and subscribe for more original horror stories delivered straight into your nightmares. And if you have a true tale or twisted idea you'd like me to bring to life, leave it in the comments below. I read them all. Some of my favorite stories come from minds just like yours. And so the final candle is burned out, but some stories never really end. They wait in the corners of your mind, and now so must you. You have heard the incantations of the demised, the shadows sworn to secrecy. But what slipped through, what followed you back into the light, if these stories stirred something inside you, if they made you hesitate before turning off the lights, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because next time, we're going deeper. So rest while you can, because next time the story just might be about you.